Let me ask you something real quick. Have you ever witnessed a moment so unexpected, so painfully real, that it forced someone to see the world completely differently? Like, not later, not after reflection, but right there in real time, as it was unfolding. Because what happened on that road in just 9 minutes didn't just challenge a man's beliefs, it shattered them. And the craziest part? It all started with a routine traffic stop. Now, before I dive in, I want you to tell me something. Where are you watching from? Type it in the comments right now. I'd love to know. And while you're at it, be honest with me. Type 1 in the comments if you like stories like this, and if not, type 0. That way I know what you really want to see next. And hey, if you ever felt judged before someone even knew your name, or if you've ever had to bite your tongue just to stay safe, then this story might hit you harder than you think. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because here on Mr. Alex Stories, we don't just tell stories. We hold up a mirror to the ones no one else wants to look into. All right, here's what happened. When I pulled onto that stretch of highway, I swear, it felt like just another slow, quiet morning. One of those long, endless back roads in a small southern town where even the wind moves slow. Dew still clung to the grass on the shoulder. The sky was soft gray, like it hadn't made up its mind yet. You could smell the earth, wet, still waking up. Nothing ever happens out there. No rush, no noise, just the dull rhythm of a routine patrol. I'd done that drive 1,000 times, checked tags, clocked speed, nodded to the mailman, waved at farmers. But that morning, I saw a black sedan, windows up, music faint inside, glide past just under the limit. Nothing suspicious, nothing out of place, except something inside me told me to flip the lights on anyway. I didn't know her name. I didn't know she was pregnant. And I sure as hell didn't know she was a Supreme Court judge. But what happened next changed me, changed everything. So I stepped out of the cruiser, boots crunching soft on the gravel, that quiet hum of my dash cam kicking in behind me. My hands did what they always do, rest on the belt, thumb near the holster, stance steady. But something felt different, not loud, not obvious, just different. Like walking into a room that was too still, too clean. She rolled the window down slow, smooth, controlled, not scared, watchful. I remember the way she looked at me, not with anger, not even with fear, just disappointment, like she'd already seen this moment before, like she already knew how it was going to go. Her car was spotless. Papers tucked into a neat leather folder on the passenger seat. Soft classical music floated from the speakers, something with a piano. And there she was, pregnant. Probably 7 months, give or take. Wearing a soft cream sweater that hugged her belly just enough to notice. Wedding band on her hand, quiet grace in her posture. She wasn't trying to command respect, she just carried it. "License and registration, ma'am?" I said out of habit. Voice flat, maybe a little too sharp. She held my gaze as she handed them over, her fingers brushing mine briefly, steady and warm. No shaking, no panic. But her eyes? They were searching me. Not out of curiosity, out of caution. "Is there a reason you pulled me over, officer?" she asked, calm but not passive. There was intention in the way she said officer, not mocking, not deferential. Just precise. I looked down at her license, Tiana Elaine McClellan. It didn't register yet. "Routine check," I replied, too quickly. A lie dressed up as protocol. And then I saw it, the curve of her belly. She'd placed one hand over it like it was second nature, like she wasn't even thinking about it. I blinked. Something twisted in me, not guilt exactly, but a kind of discomfort, like I'd suddenly realized I was standing in a space I had no right to control. She looked away first, turned back to the wheel, silent, still. And I hesitated. For the first time in a long time, I hesitated. I should have walked back to the cruiser, should have run her license, should have gone through the motions. But I stood there for a beat too long, like I was waiting for something else. Maybe an excuse, maybe clarity, maybe just permission to be human for a second. The rain hadn't started yet, but the clouds had thickened above us, muting the colors of the morning. Time felt slower, thicker, and even though we barely spoke more than a few sentences, I felt a shift. Not in her, in me. Because she wasn't what I expected. She didn't flinch, didn't play polite or passive to make me comfortable. She just sat there, calm, pregnant, dignified, and for reasons I couldn't explain, or maybe didn't want to, I suddenly wanted to earn that calm. Something about her presence pulled at a part of me I'd buried under years of badge-wearing pride and rules and procedures, and even though I didn't know her, I knew I couldn't treat her like just another stop. I glanced at the folder on her seat. "You headed somewhere important?" She paused, then simply, "Yes." I nodded. No more questions. Not yet. Didn't want to push. Didn't want to retreat either. It wasn't a confrontation. It wasn't a connection. Not yet. It was just two people on opposite sides of a window, trapped in a moment neither one of us had chosen, but somehow both of us would remember. I kept holding her license a little longer than I needed to. Not because I was checking anything. Not because I suspected her of anything. But because I didn't want to walk away. The name Tiana McClellan kept echoing somewhere in the back of my mind. Familiar, like hearing a melody you can't quite place. Maybe from a headline, maybe from a conversation years ago, but I couldn't grab onto it, not yet. "You headed somewhere important?" I asked again, this time gentler. She tilted her head just slightly, the kind of movement that wasn't defensive, just tired. "To a judicial summit," she said. Even in her calm, there was steel in her voice. Precise, professional, measured. My eyes flicked back to the folder on the seat. It was embossed with a gold seal. Something official. I should have known then. I should have connected the dots. But instead, I asked, "Is this your car?" She looked at me. Really looked at me this time. Her lips parted like she was about to say something sharp. But she stopped herself. "Yes," she said, "it's registered to me." Pause. "Do you usually ask that after you've already seen the registration?" Her tone didn't rise, didn't accuse. It was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that's earned, not given. The kind you carry when you've had to explain your humanity, more times than anyone should. And suddenly, I felt it. Not from her, from me. Doubt, guilt, curiosity. All mixing together in ways I wasn't used to. I didn't know what I was trying to find. I didn't know what I was trying to prove. It was probably nothing, I told myself. Just another stop. Just another day. But the way she sat there, tall, silent, patient, like she knew exactly what was happening and had already decided she wasn't going to make it easier for me, it unsettled me. Because I wasn't used to being seen like that. Like someone who needed to be handled. She placed both hands gently on the steering wheel again. Her fingers stretched wide like a signal, not afraid, just exhausted. I glanced back down at the license. Tiana McClellan. Why did that name itch in the back of my head? Maybe it wasn't the name. Maybe it was just her. How she carried herself. How even her silence said more than most people's shouting. Then she said it. "Is there a reason you're holding my ID so long, officer?" My mouth opened. Nothing came out. It wasn't a trap. It wasn't even a challenge. It was a mirror. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't like the reflection. I handed the license back, slower than usual. Our fingers touched again. Barely. But this time, I felt the heat in my palm. Not from her, from me. And somewhere in all that silence, I started to wonder if I had more questions than answers. Not about her, about myself. I took a step back. Just one. But it felt like I was falling. The clouds had thickened above me now, heavy, low, like they were holding something in. Thunder rolled in the distance, low and slow, like a warning whispered across the sky. And the air changed, got heavier. You know that stillness right before the rain starts? That feeling that something's about to break? Yeah, that. I walked back to the cruiser, but my boots didn't feel steady anymore. The gravel under me felt like it was shifting, or maybe it was just everything inside my chest. I slid into the seat and closed the door, but I didn't start the engine, didn't radio in, didn't do anything. Then dispatch crackled through. Confirming attendance from Justice McClellan. She'll be arriving shortly. Security is already en route. I stared at the radio like it had cursed at me. Justice. McClellan. I didn't move. Didn't blink. It was like all the pieces of the puzzle I hadn't been trying to solve suddenly snapped together. I fumbled for my phone. Thumbs clumsy. Signal weak. Tiana McClellan. The screen loaded slow, like even the universe wanted to stretch this moment out. And then there she was. The headshot came up first. Honor Tiana Elaine McClellan, Supreme Court Justice, a whole string of accolades under her name, rulings that shaped the state, articles, interviews, photos of her standing in courtrooms at podiums holding law books like armor. She wasn't just someone important, she was a symbol, and I had pulled her over on the side of a back road like she was nobody, like her calm didn't come from years of building something, like her dignity was just some fluke. I closed my eyes, leaned back in my seat, and it hit me. Not in a dramatic way, not like a punch, more like a slow wave, a rising tide of shame I couldn't outrun. I remembered all the other stops I'd made over the years, all the assumptions I never questioned, all the times I thought being by the book meant I was being right. But this wasn't about law, it was about me. How easily I let that uniform tell me I was the one with the power. How quickly I'd tried to shrink a woman who'd spent her whole life expanding the space for justice. The rain started then, soft at first, tapping on the windshield like a second hand ticking too loud in a quiet room. I looked up. Her car was still there, same classical music playing faintly from inside. She hadn't moved, just sat there, staring ahead, hands resting on the wheel, like she knew, like she always knew. The rain thickened, running in streaks across the glass. Thunder rumbled again, closer now. The sky had dropped lower, darker. I should have felt anger at myself, I should have felt ashamed, but what I felt most was small, because in 9 minutes, she hadn't raised her voice, she hadn't pulled rank, she hadn't needed to. She let me show myself, and I did. I saw her differently now. But the truth? She hadn't changed. I had. And that realization landed with more force than anything the storm could bring. I stepped out of the cruiser with a stomach full of thunder. The rain had picked up, falling steady now, thin, cold streaks on my neck, soaking into the collar of my uniform. But I barely noticed, because everything inside me was storming harder. I walked back toward her car, not too fast, not too slow, just moving. Because if I stopped, I didn't know what I'd do. She was still there. Same posture, same silence, not a single movement wasted. Her calm made me feel loud, clumsy, like everything I'd said, every question I'd asked earlier had been echoing. I reached her window again. She looked over at me, expression unreadable. Her eyes weren't angry, they weren't smug, they were tired. And then she said it, cool, measured, gentle. "Everything all right, officer?" I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. I stuttered, "Yes, I need a moment." Her brow raised slightly. That was all. I turned away before I could say something I'd regret, more than I already had. Walked back across the wet gravel, boots slipping slightly now. Not from the rain, from the weight. I leaned against the side of my cruiser, wiped my face with the back of my hand. Didn't matter that it was already wet. My chest was tight, throat dry, heart beat like a hammer behind my ribs, and my mind wouldn't stop spinning. What have I done? Would I have asked those questions if I knew who she was? Would I have reached for her license like that? Held on to it like that? Looked at her like that? Would I have spoken with more respect or just more restraint? And which would have been worse? The storm around me didn't matter. The real one was inside. And here's the truth I didn't want to admit. Some part of me had seen her, felt something the moment I walked up to that window. Not attraction, not admiration, something deeper. Something that unsettled the foundation I thought I stood on. Dignity. The kind that doesn't beg, doesn't bend. The kind that makes you realize you've been walking around with less than you thought. And now, knowing her title, her power, her impact, it didn't make what I did better. It didn't even make it worse. It just made it clear. I wasn't looking at a mistake. I was looking at a pattern that I'd never questioned until now. I tried to stand tall, square my shoulders like I used to, but something had cracked, and it wasn't going back. I wanted to fix it, to say something meaningful, but nothing came to mind that didn't sound like an apology too late, or an excuse too early. So I just stood there, in the rain, soaking, spinning, trying to find the version of myself I used to believe in, and wondering if I could ever look at him the same way again. The rain was steady now, not a storm, not chaos, just that slow, relentless kind that seeps into everything, even the parts of you thought were protected. I stood by the cruiser, watching her silhouette through the windshield. She hadn't moved, still upright, still calm, still there, and that did something to me I wasn't ready for. I took a breath, deep, shaky, not to calm down, but to step up. And I walked back toward her window. Every step sounded louder than it should have. Gravel soaked and squishing under my boots like it knew something I didn't want to admit. I reached her again. She looked at me, same as before. Eyes open, soft, but no softness in her expectations. She wasn't looking for comfort. She was watching to see who I was going to be. I leaned down slowly, not out of respect, but out of weight. Because suddenly it felt like I was carrying everything. I swallowed hard. My voice came out cracked. Not broken, but brittle. Like it had been trying too hard to sound strong for too long. I owe you more than an apology. She blinked once. Didn't speak. I kept going. I assumed things I shouldn't have. The questions I asked, the way I stood at your window. It wasn't protocol. It was bias. It was me looking at you and deciding who you were before I even knew your name. I felt my chest tighten. I profiled you, I judged you, and I've got no excuse, not one. She didn't rush to respond. She just held my gaze, like she'd done this dance before. And then, with a voice calm enough to chill the bones, "It happens all the time," she said, her hands resting on the steering wheel, fingers unmoving. "You just happened to realize it this time." There was no venom, no raised voice, no demand, just a truth so quiet, it echoed. It hit harder than anything I'd ever been told in my life, because it wasn't an insult. It was experience, measured, earned, lived. I looked at her, this woman who in any other setting would be flanked by clerks, walking marble halls, presiding over matters that shaped the future. And yet here she was, pregnant, parked, pulled over, still having to prove herself in silence. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to make me feel small. My own reflection in her rearview mirror was already doing that. I looked down at my badge, felt the weight of it, not physical, moral. Because for the first time, it didn't feel like a shield. It felt like a mirror, and I didn't like what it showed me. I spoke again, softer this time. "I don't expect forgiveness." She tilted her head slightly, lips parting just enough. "I'm not here to offer that." Another pause. Then she said it, something I'll never forget. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last, but if you're the one who remembers, maybe that's where something changes." That silence that followed? It wasn't awkward. It was earned. Because some moments don't ask for answers. They just ask you to feel the full weight of them and carry it forward. I stood there, still gripping the air where her presence had just been, like maybe if I stood still long enough, the wind would blow her back to me. But she was gone. Gone with the storm. Gone with the silence. Gone with the part of me that still thought I had it all figured out. You ever have a moment where something inside you just collapses? Not loudly. Not like glass shattering or metal buckling. No, it's quieter than that. Like a house settling after years of holding itself up too straight. Like finally admitting to yourself you were wrong. And not just today, but for years. I didn't follow her. Didn't chase down her taillights. Didn't flash my lights in some desperate act of redemption. No, because I knew whatever just happened between us, it didn't need a redo. It needed to end exactly like that. And maybe I needed to sit in it for a while, to feel it, because you can't unsee truth once it's stared you in the face. I leaned on the hood of my cruiser, still warm from the engine, rain falling in soft sheets all around me. No calls on the radio, no dispatch, no backup, just me and the echo of her words playing over and over in my head. It happens all the time. You just happen to realize it this time. That sentence, it didn't accuse, but it revealed. Not just about the system, not just about the job, but about me. The way I've been trained to look, to judge, to protect, and to profile. Sometimes without even knowing I was doing it. How many stops had I made where the outcome was written before the conversation even began? How many innocent faces had I missed because I was too busy watching for shadows? And what hurt the most? That I almost missed her too. Even as she sat there, regal, pregnant, powerful in silence. I almost missed the most human moment of my entire career. And all because I saw the skin before I saw the soul. I shut my eyes, the rain sliding down my face like the sky itself wanted to baptize me. I let it. I needed it. Because when you strip away the badge, the uniform, the rules, what's left? Just a man. And a choice. To keep walking the path you're used to, or to finally take the harder one, the one that leads inward. That day, I took the first step. Not toward a better officer, not toward some badge-polished version of justice, but toward humility. I didn't know what would happen next. Didn't know if she'd report me, didn't know if my name would be dragged through headlines or courtrooms, but I did know one thing. I didn't want to forget her. Didn't want to file her under incident or routine stop. She was a moment, a mirror, a reminder that we are always on the edge of becoming someone better, if we're brave enough to look at who we are now. And maybe that's why I stayed there so long, watching the horizon she disappeared into, because I knew I couldn't follow her, but I also couldn't go back to who I was before. It had been 3 days, 3 slow, echoing days since the rain, since the stop, since her, since that road that I thought I knew turned into something else entirely. I hadn't told anyone about what happened, not the guys at the station, not my supervisor, not even my own reflection in the bathroom mirror. Some things don't come out easy. Some truths you carry in silence. And then, that morning, there it was. Just sitting in my mailbox like any other envelope. No stamp, no address, no sender. Just my name, handwritten, simple, steady. Something about the way it was written made me pause. I opened it right there on the front steps. Coffee still in my hand. Sun not even fully up. Inside, a single piece of paper. Thick, expensive, ivory white. Just one sentence written in clean, slanted cursive. We're all being watched, officer, especially by ourselves. TM. That was it. No threat, no lecture, no angry tirade about justice or policy, no accusation. Just truth. And somehow, that made it heavier. I stared at those words like they might rearrange themselves and give me a different ending, but they didn't. Because they weren't meant to. They weren't meant to scold me or comfort me. They were meant to hold me. In that quiet space between guilt and growth, between shame and awakening. She didn't need to say more, because what she'd written, that was the final act, the last pull of the curtain. We're all being watched, officer. Not by cameras, not by the public, but by something far less forgiving, by ourselves, by the version of us that still remembers what we promised to be, the version that knows the difference between right and routine, the version that lingers in the room when the lights go out and asks, "Did you do the right thing today?" And suddenly, I felt her presence again. Not physically, not in any dramatic Hollywood way, but in that ache you feel when someone has seen you exactly as you are, flawed, scared, uncertain, and they still chose not to destroy you. Instead, they handed you the mirror and walked away. I sat down on the porch steps, the letter trembling slightly in my hand, not from the wind, but from me. And I thought about what it meant. All of it. The stop. The storm. The silence. The fact that she didn't need me to say anything more. And yet somehow, I wanted to. I wanted to apologize again. Properly. Not just for how I stopped her, but for the years that made that stop possible. For all the assumptions I never even noticed I carried. And maybe I wanted to thank her too. For seeing through the uniform. For not turning away when she had every right to. For letting me walk away from that roadside not as a disgrace, but as a question mark. Because that's what I was now. Not a villain, not a hero. Just a man in the middle of becoming. And that, I think, is the hardest place to be. Some moments don't need to explode to change everything. Some come in silence, with nothing more than a name and a mirror. We expect big moments. Loud moments. The kind of moments that shake the earth beneath us, that tear open the sky and leave us gasping for air. But what if the real change doesn't come from the storm, but from the quiet afterwards? I remember thinking about all the things I'd ever done to others, all the choices I'd made, all the stops I'd written tickets for, all the assumptions I'd whispered to myself in the back of my head, thinking they didn't show. I'd carried them like armor. But that day, I found out that armor can be heavier than you think, because it's not the world that breaks you. It's the weight of what you refuse to see. And for all those years I hadn't seen it. I'd only seen the job, the rules, the uniform. I'd been blind to the faces that passed through my life, until one moment when the veil lifted, and I saw the humanity in front of me. I saw her, Tiana, a name I thought I knew but didn't. A person I thought I understood, but I had no idea. And maybe that's the hardest thing we face, isn't it? The moments when we finally see something clearly, only to realize it was there all along. So, was I wrong for doing what I always did? For playing by the book, never questioning it? Or was I wrong because I waited so long to ask myself the questions that mattered? The ones that haunt me now. I wish I could tell you that I had some grand, cathartic moment of redemption, that I found the right words, that I turned everything around in one brave act of defiance against my past. But I didn't. I stood there in the rain, watching her disappear into the storm, watching a woman who was more than I could ever pretend to be drive away. And I stayed silent. Maybe that's the point. Maybe some lessons aren't meant to be loud. Maybe they don't need to be big. Maybe all it takes is a moment of quiet self-reflection when you finally stop running from what you've become. Darren stands alone, the rain now a soft, steady beat against the world. He slowly removes his badge. His fingers linger on the cold metal like he's not sure what to do with it. Not yet. And he places it carefully on the table. Not a resignation, not an escape, but a moment of thought, a choice to pause, to think, fade to black. If this story made you think, not just about others but about yourself, subscribe to Mr. Alex Stories, because the truth isn't always loud, but it always echoes.